Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and we're together for this episode, number 62 of the Circles and Squares PlayStation Podcast. Trying to figure out how to record with as little chair squeaking noise as possible because we have obviously a different audio setup. Kate over here hanging out with me today, but yeah, welcome to the show, Kate. It's a big one for you specifically. As we teased last time on the news show, Kate has beaten every Elden Ring boss. And we're here to talk about it today. How excited are you for this episode?
Oh man, I'm so excited. I feel like Elden Ring is one of those things where like, it's all FromSoft games actually, but Elden Ring being the newest one, it's one of those things where it's like, if anyone asks me like, oh, so how was Elden Ring? It's like, well, I hope you prepared the next 3 hours of your life. Like, you fool, you've opened the floodgate.
Don't worry, everybody. This will not be a 3-hour podcast, but I think overall, we probably have like 3 hours worth of Elden Ring discussions like over all of the podcasts. So it's kind of like, you know, it balances out. We have a couple other games to talk about today as well, of course. And then we're also, for the second half of the show, returning one of our favorite segments. It's Good Listening, where today I'll be quizzing Kate on some video game music that I put together, and we'll see how she does. Now, from my recollection, did I get 5 out of 5 on the last Good Listening, or was that a quiz?
I think you perfected a quiz. I don't think it was a matching quiz.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
The music quiz are infamously difficult.
They're very difficult.
So we'll see how I do.
Like I was telling you before, I think I made this one. It's a little easier.
See, I don't love that you said that because now if I do poorly, it's so much worse.
I'm trying to psych you out, but anyway, let's get right into the show because we have a lot to talk about, and potentially even more exciting than you beating Elden Ring, Kate. I've been recommending you a game for a long time, and it's one of my favorites. Talked about it on the show quite a bit when I played it, but of course it's one of those you can't really say too much because there's so many spoiler holes to fall down. But let's see, you started Inscription, finally.
I finally started Inscription. We got that Steam share working. I booted it up, so I've played about 2 hours, so this is a very brief first impression, but I will tell you, since I've started that game, I have probably at least every like half hour, it's just popped into my mind and been like, you know, do you think you've got time for Inscription today?
I hope you do.
Holy fuck, this game. Now I've gone into it with 0 spoilers at all, which I've somehow like miraculously managed to avoid anything. And I'm so excited. And even within these 2 hours, there's been so many moments where I've been like, oh, holy shit, like that's so cool, or like it just keeps you on your toes and keeps introducing these tiny little new aspects to the game that make you stop and think. And the mystery and like the setting is really, I think, kind of the best part of the game for me.
It drags you along, right? It's because the card game itself is fun, but it's all the little stuff sprinkled in about like, oh, why did I have to like continue at the start of the game instead of like new game? Or why is it that this character is mentioning something about the cabin to me, or just like, you know, you always want to figure out what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, you know, the first time you lose the card game, it's like, well, what does that mean? And like, I think what we'll do probably is once I finish it, we'll talk about it with very explicit spoilers. But I will say so far that like the atmosphere alone and the setting in that creepy cabin, it's kind of like, it's not like a horror game, but it's definitely unsettling, and it's that creepy atmosphere was enough to keep my interest. But then I've actually been really enjoying the card game as well. Like my expectation was that was maybe going to be the weakest part, was the actual like
right
you know, physical card game that you play. But it's been continuously introducing new mechanics, whether that's like, you know, an ability on a card, it has flying, or it has like a taunt, or whatever kind of like card things that are kind of staples in card games. But it's got a really interesting mana system that's really kind of dark and creepy. And
it is creepy, isn't it?
And it's got the Slay the Spire-esque kind of map where not as large as Slay the Spire, but you do kind of get to pick paths every now and again where it's like, oh, I could go this way to get some items that will help me, or I could go right to like, you know, go to the bonfire that makes a card a little bit stronger. And some of those have been really interesting, and I feel like you get a decent amount of choice to actually like build your deck. And the card, I would genuinely just play the card game at this point.
Yeah, well, the good news is you can, because for people out there listening who maybe like me have played I played a lot of Slay the Spire, I've played Inscription, and you're like, oh, you know, talking about Inscription on this podcast makes me want to go back and play. Just for those of you who don't know, there's something called KC's Mod, which is basically a game. It's like a mod for Slay the Spire, but it's made, I think, officially by the development team. And you just basically play the card game as a roguelike with none of the other sort of cabin stuff going on. So you actually can do that if you like. And I might go do it too, because I really want to play more of this now that you've started.
Man,
yeah.
It's so good. I will tell maybe a little spoiler-free thing, but if you know, you know. I'm a big fan of Stoat. Big fan of Stoat so far. And the thing that's really weighing on my mind right now is a combination of how the camera works in the game, and not necessarily your POV, but there's a camera, and a card named Lewis.
Lewis, yeah.
And my mind is just reeling on who Lewis may be. Lewis might not even end up being like something that matters in the long run, but there's the card camera function and someone named Lewis, and my mind has just been like spinning on repeat about what that means.
Well, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you'll find out, and you should play Inscription. So I think the plan on this one is go radio silent from here on out, and then once Kate beats it, which I'm assuming probably won't be terribly long.
Hope it's soon, yeah.
I think we're gonna have to do a big spoiler cast on this game because there's just so much to talk about with that. So we'll put a pin in Inscription for now, and let's change gears to a game with a very, very different tone than Inscription. Because I haven't been playing a whole ton of different stuff. You know, I've been like buried in Fortnite with the event going on. The season ends in a couple of weeks, so I'm just trying to finish all that stuff off.
You should, Dalvin, you unlocked Sexy Indy.
I unlocked Sexy Indiana Jones, everybody. It was very good. Kate and I played some split screen. You know, in Fortnite, we played split screen the other day. Kate, you'd never played before,
I'd never played before.
And we won 3 games in a row on duos and no build split screen. That was fun. And in the process, I managed to find a tent and stash an exotic weapon in there. Don't worry, everybody. It's a good thing because I managed to unlock Sexy Indiana Jones. I'm so happy about that. It's just like he's got this explorer thing, but he's got like a sleeveless shirt, and it's kind of
unbuttoned, yeah, a little bit. He's like making that look where he's got his lips pursed
it's the
a little bit.
The smolder from
right.
what's that movie? Zoolander, yeah. Anyway, Sexy Indiana Jones. But so I've just been playing a ton of that, so I don't really have like a new big thing to talk about. But I did a couple weeks ago go back and play the original Pokemon Snap. I don't know why, it's just on the Nintendo Online, and so I decided, like, why the hell not? Started it up, and it's just so nostalgic. You know, you got that music, and it's like do 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 do, and the Professor Oak is like, "Welcome back," and you go take a bunch of pictures for him.
Doesn't Professor Oak have like a weird voice in that game?
Yeah.
He's always like, when you go back to his pictures, like he doesn't fully talk, but he's just like, "Hi."
Yeah, he has like
kind of weird.
He has like just one-off like single word voice lines, but I feel like it's not the original voice actor, or like the way they've recorded audio on the N64 maybe was a little screwed up because it just he sounds weird. And the whole game is kind of weird. Like, I don't exactly know to this point exactly how to progress and like unlock the stages. I think you just need to take enough good pictures of a certain amount of Pokemon. So you're pretty much just going through and like, you know, I know the first couple levels especially so well of like, if I throw a ball in here, it's going to make Scyther come out of these branches. And like, you know, I know how to wake Snorlax up later when you get the thing, the flute. And, you know, it was like a trip down memory lane because we used to play that game through so many times. We just sit for an afternoon and you can beat the whole thing in like 2 hours. I don't know
if we ever owned it. I feel like we rented it a lot, and then
I think we did own it
because we can't. Do you think so?
I think Julie got it for us.
Maybe we owned it
pretty
eventually.
Sure.
But
it was fun.
Okay, I've got a question for you. Is the river level still the best level? That's the one I always remember, where you're going in the river and all like the water Pokemon are like jumping out. And there's like kind of like forest along the edge. So
I like the river level, but it kind of pissed me off when I was playing because, you know, that level has you know, those certain levels that have those like the gates where you have to do special things at the end to unlock the next level coming up.
Right.
And so for the river level, it's a real big pain in the ass because to do that, to open the special gate at the river level, there's like it's basically like a water slide, and there's Squirtles in the water and they're floating, and you have to hit them with your pester balls to knock them out onto the shore, because later on at the very end of the level, those same Squirtles, however many you hit out of the water, will appear at the end, and you have to like hit them at a specific angle to go up this mountain, and it knocks a Mankey off a cliff. And then if you knock him off the cliff, he lands on a button which opens a gate to unlock like one of the next levels. But hitting that Mankey is a bit of a pain in the ass because you're on the water and it's moving, and I guess all the stages are moving, it's on rails. But it's a pain in the ass, and I actually missed him a couple times, so I had to restart the whole level, go back through, hit the Squirtles again, and it's just like, oh man, I hope I don't have to, like, I hope I don't miss again, otherwise I'll have to go do this again. And that's, I think, one of the frustrating things about this game, like, coming back and, like, not being a kid, knowing what to do is, like, if you miss something in one of these levels, it is such a pain because you have to basically replay the entire thing all the way through to the end. There's very little speed up.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask, if there's a speed up. Because in the new one, you can just hold down a button and you just go quite quickly. So you could, like, skip kind of sections of the level if you wanted to.
No, you can do that, but you unlock the speed up as, like, the last thing that you get. So by the time you get it, you're pretty much, you know, 75-80% of the way done the game. And it's not even that fast either. Like, I just wish there could be, like, a you know, an option to, like, oh, I missed what I was looking for. I came back to this level for this one specific thing. I missed it. I'm just gonna, like, fast forward and go through. Right. But it was, you know what, though, like, that, I don't want to complain. It was just a fun time to go through and, like, remember how to unlock all the cool guys. Like, I don't know, I went to the fire level and I didn't really remember too much about that, but you get to the point where, like, the Moltres egg is blocking the pathway, and so you have to hit it off, and Moltres comes out, and then things like, you remember how you, like, if you spam a bunch of apples at the Charmander, they all, like, come running out.
That's right. There's, like, a massive horde of them, and you can like knock one into a volcano and it comes out a Charmeleon or something. Right. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, just remembering those little things, those little, you know, set pieces, I guess you'd call them. But you haven't played for so long, so it's kind of fun to go back and acknowledge that. The only one I couldn't figure out how to do, and I wasn't about to, like, I didn't really want to pull up a guide and start getting into this, was that I couldn't figure out how to get the Gyarados to come out of the waterfall. Oh, that's right. Because I was thinking about that one, and I don't know, I just couldn't figure it out, and I kind of gave up. But I got the Charizard, I got the Moltres, I got the you know, you can get, like, the Magnemites to form together into the Magnezone, that's
or
in
the
cave one, right?
Yeah, pretty cool. And then the last level, of course, is Mew, and you're kind of in space, and you got to hit Mew. Right. Yeah, it was kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, it's a cool game.
You gotta play the new one now. I'd love to hear your comparison on how you think the new one holds up.
Yeah, I'd like to play the new one too. It was, I don't know what made me do this. I was just impulsively like on the Switch online. I'm like, you know what? I may as well try this. I know Pokemon Puzzle League just came out on there too.
Whoa, okay, I'm gonna play.
I don't think I'm in for that one.
I don't think that was a great game, but I remember playing, like, probably way too much of that as a kid.
I have some memories of a friend of mine who, I feel like you and I just used to go on there and pretty much just button mash and, like, spam it. But I have a friend who's, like, hardcore, really good at that game, and I remember being, like, you know, 10 or 11 years old and just going over playing Pokemon Snap and getting slammed, and I was like, oh my god, this isn't fun at all. Yeah. And yeah,
what's funny about that game is, like, I would never have played the game just for the game. The only reason I played it was because, like, oh, those blocks are fire for fire Pokemon, and those ones are water for water ones, and like I fucking loved it. I played a lot of it, but if it was not Pokemon skinned, I wouldn't have touched it for 5 minutes.
I agree. I completely agree with you. And, like, your lives are, like, if you pick whichever trainer you pick as your character, your lives are, like, they're 3 of their Pokemon, and you're like, oh no, you KO'd my Vulpix. Like, I better choose my Growlithe. It's like, as if it matters.
As if it matters. That's right. That is how powerful the Pokemon brand is.
That brand, yeah. Jeez. Anyway, Pokemon Snap, I don't really have much else to say about it. So why don't we get into the big hotness of the day? Tell me all about your experience with Elden Ring. This is the we've been waiting for so long, everybody.
Man, all right. Well,
we're here. We're finally here.
So I have 149 hours in my Elden Ring save file. And I feel like I need about 149 hours to really cover this game in depth. Like, there's so much to say. There's so many aspects to this game. So I'll try to not take that long. And maybe you can keep me honest on that. But I gotta say, I have some gripes with Elden Ring, but it is an absolute masterclass of a game. Like, the fact that they pulled this off and put a game of this caliber together is honestly insane. Like, I'm not an open world person. I think that's a bias that I had going into Elden Ring, and I still have. It's just not my preference of game. But Elden Ring, I think, justifies being an open world, and it's pretty magnificent what they did with it. That being said, I still think I would have preferred a more typical FromSoft game where they're about 40 hours and you go through. Sometimes you have some direction over like which areas you go to in an order, but they're pretty like specific. Once you're there, you do this level, then you go to the next area, and they're pieced together, but they're kind of semi-linear in a sense.
Right.
And I still think those were the best parts of Elden Ring, is because they have they call them the dungeons, but it's stuff like Stormvale Castle, where it is that traditionally you go in, you got all the twisty paths, and they kind of meet up, and that door opens, and you're like, oh fuck, that's this takes me back to the original bonfire, and that's amazing. So those are the best parts, but especially in the early game when you're just on your horse and you're going around and exploring, that was pretty magical.
It was magical. I remember like when I started the game up, and I'm like 40 hours in, so I'm just like, I feel like I've played a lot, but then in comparison to you, I feel like I've barely played at all. But you're right, like that first like 5-6 hours with when you get the horse, you're just kind of riding around and you're like, oh my god, like this is just, it's just captivating, like just being in this world and seeing what there is. You could just find something in every little every little nook and cranny. There's something, and I'm curious to hear from you, like, does that sense of exploration and like fascination with the world continue for the whole time? Because for me, it's like 40 hours in, I feel like it's just kind of becoming like, okay, maybe I don't want to explore it anymore, maybe I just want to like actually try and use my time to do something productive.
Yeah, so I think that is the biggest thing with Elden Ring, is its achievement is that it's amazing, it's massive, holy shit, they threw so much into the game. But I think I might have preferred if I didn't have to play for 149 hours. And to be fair, like, that's not going to be everybody's playthrough. I go very slowly, very thoroughly. I went to every goddamn catacomb in mine. There didn't need to be 57 of each. But, like, obviously I think it's intended that you don't necessarily do everything. But I also think at the same time that FromSoft fans are, like, outrageously neurotic and will do every single
There's
little
a
thing.
percentage that will try and do exactly what you did. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, something to expect as well. But this game to me was like valleys. So if the other games were all like a lot more consistent, Elden Ring surpassed them at certain times of my playthrough, but then also went down into dips where it was less compelling than other games. So instead of having that consistent S tier, Elden Ring was like, okay, we're at an S+, but now we've like dipped down to like a B or something,
right.
And
now
we're back up, and
now we're in the catacomb for the 50th time or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's hard to say, because I'm sure some people want to be in a game for like 7 years of their life, like those people that are still playing Skyrim and doing new builds and things.
Right.
Like, it's awesome. But for me, like, I like getting through a game and getting onto something else. So the length was probably the downside to me. And I feel like some of the later areas were not as exciting to run around in as some of the earlier areas. And there becomes a bit less variety as you go along. Like, by the time you're through to the second half of the game, there aren't very many new enemy types.
Oh, really?
So they reuse some enemies, which I think is fine. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. But the first 50 hours of the game, you're constantly just finding new things. And I feel like maybe spreading it out a bit more would have been better. Like, there are some unique enemies to certain areas, but a lot of the time it's kind of like, oh, those T-Rex dogs are back. I'm like, oh god, I'm kind of done fighting them. And
I only just introduced myself to them when I was playing before, so they're quite new to me. They ripped me apart, and I died a lot, but
Oh my god, they're pretty rough. They're a little aggressive. So I think the big things we'll maybe want to touch on, I guess, is the level design. I don't want to get into story too much, although presentation of story I think is an interesting thing in Elden Ring. And then combat, obviously, and some of the bosses.
Yeah, right. I had some questions for you too. Like,
okay.
Like, just in general. So I'll sprinkle them in. Okay. Yeah. Like, I just wanted to know. So, like, what ended up being your favorite sort of play style in Elden Ring? Or, like, what kind of build did you have? Because I know there's so many people online that are like, oh, I'm playing magic only, and magic's the easiest. Or some people want a more traditional Souls type of experience. So, like, what did you go with?
I had to come out of my comfort zone a little bit with Elden Ring. And this is, I think, a blessing and a curse of the game, is that you are really encouraged to play a bunch of different builds. So they give you the tiers that you can respec once you've beaten a certain boss. You are able to then go to her, and she will, with a currency in the game, respec your stats, like just from absolute starting. You know, it doesn't matter, you're level 100, you're spending every single point you've leveled up to get new stuff. And they're also pretty generous with the upgrade material for weapons, so you can like max out quite a few weapons, you can keep respecing. And I think there is an emphasis on this game of adapting to the boss or the area that you're in, which I think is a cool idea on paper. And for some people, I know that that's a massive draw of the game, is like, oh, you know, I played as like a spell sword for a little bit, and now I'm like a straight up mage, and now I've got 2 big axes, and that's really cool. But for me personally, I like to go in with the same setup for every game.
Right.
And I felt like that was kind of to my detriment sometimes in Elden Ring. So I went in, I had my Uchi Katana like always, and a little parry. I ended up using the buckler instead of the parry dagger just because it's objectively better, which is unfortunate. But it just has a better parry window, so whatever. So I had that. And then I was getting partway through, and I was talking to a friend, and he was watching me play a little bit, and he's like, your damage is terrible. Like, your damage is so incredibly low. Like, why are you doing no damage? I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just using my Uchi Katana like I normally do. And he's like, well, why don't you have a second katana? I'm like, well, I got my parry shield. He's like, what if you're not parrying? I was like, well, I don't know. This is just my build that I've done in every other game. He's
what
like,
if I am parrying?
I was like, what if I want to? I don't know. And he's like, you need to have a second katana. So I hold the second katana in my other hand, and all of a sudden I'm doing like considerably more damage because it's just better to do it that way. I'm like, okay, fine. And then I'm going along, and then it's like, okay, the katanas bleed, so that's a decent part of my damage. But it's like, okay, this area is like immune to bleed. But it's like, oh, I don't want to swap out my stuff because it's what I like using. And so there's so many things in the game, like consumables, all the crafting, you know, like you're encouraged to have many weapons on you. And I think it's cool for a lot of people, and I totally get why that's fun. But for me, I felt a little bit penalized of just wanting to consistently use the build that I liked, because it didn't always benefit me.
Yeah. So do you think that maybe the reason, like, I'm just thinking about this now and seeing like, well, the game is so long, like maybe the ability to use so many different weapons and kind of the way it encourages you to try, and you feel like you're being led to do that, could be like part of their strategy of making the game less monotonous for the length of it, because it would be kind of like, okay, well, for this, you know, I'm changing my whole playstyle. It almost feels like a new game partway through, like you've been refreshed.
And I like that, but I just feel like they could do that in a way where it's like, it's an option if you want to, and not kind of like sort of what we're pushing you towards doing. And like, you definitely don't have to. Like, I will say, like, there's people like Let Me Solo Her. There's people that run this game at like level 1.
That's what I was gonna say.
Like, you can do it. It's 100% correct. But it just, there's a fine line between Elden Ring, where I think they've really gone super big anime bosses and like crazy stuff that you encounter that's really cool. But it feels a little bit more like, if you're not using all your tools, you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage. Whereas, and maybe this is my problem for approaching it in the way of like, I'm playing like other FromSoft games, which maybe that's my fault, but it's like, I don't normally use consumables. I hardly even use like the bonus skills you get like in Dark Souls 3, or like even in Sekiro, you get like the skills that use like mana and things. Like, I hardly even use those. And the game, I never felt like I was ever like penalized for not using them, but in Elden Ring it's like, you're a fucking idiot, like you better use this. Why aren't you summoning?
The amount of times that we're talking about a game and like you have some whack restriction on yourself that just like no one else would impose is the funniest thing.
I just find it fun. Like, I'm not even doing it because it's like, oh, I'm hardcore. I just do it because like, I just like the simplicity of like having the base moveset, right? Like, I just like dodge, hit. Like, to me, that's more fun than using like, and I throw a big lightning bolt or whatever. But, you know, I gave up and I started shooting fire from my eyes. So fuck
I was going to ask if you gave into the magic as well. Because the magic to me is very fascinating. Like, I've only played with like a melee, like I have a big hammer or something. Like I haven't really explored, aside from I have the dragon hand and put fire all over the ground. But I'm just like, I've heard and I've seen, you see like little clips and stuff. Like the magic is just what's broken about this game. If you get stuck, like switch to magic. Do you think that's true?
I don't know enough about all the, like, there's so many things in the game, right? Like, I don't know enough about each individual spell or how it works, but I think in general magic tends to be strong because it's a ranged option. And a lot of bosses in this game just go absolutely fucking nuts, especially late game. It's like genuinely watching an anime sometimes where they're like 40 string combo you.
Jesus.
And so if you want to hit them with a sword, you can't walk up while they're just like scratching like a maniac. If you're far away and shoot a spell at them while they're doing it, or like, maybe you run away and it gives you a little bit more options. So magic does tend to be strong just because it puts some distance, and you're typically like, if you're not beside them, you're less likely to get hit. So magic does tend to be good, and I will, like, some of the magic in this game is fucking cool. Like, you can do some cool stuff. Like, there's the gravity stuff, there's like the regular magic, there's the faith things. I went for the frenzied because I did the frenzied flame ending.
Okay. That means nothing to me. But
sort of like you have a few different options of how you want to like burn the Erd tree in the end, because you're trying to get there, and you can choose not to burn it, you can choose to burn it a few different ways. So I went frenzied flame, which is kind of like the chaos route, just because I thought it was cool, and I liked some of the characters that led up to it. And so I did that with the frenzied. It's so funny. It's like you just like kind of shoot lava out of your eyes. Like, it's so fucked up. So I had a bit of that, which was pretty cool. And it was definitely helpful against certain enemies. It's like, you know what? Like, fuck you, flying birds. Like, you're just getting lightning eyes. Right.
Okay, so you mentioned like the flying birds, different areas, and different, different areas compel you to use certain weapons in a way.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, now that you've been through everything, what was your favorite area in the game?
Okay, so I think the best, I'm going to sort of cheat by saying a few dungeons, not big areas. Walking into Lindale, did you ever make it to Lindale, the capital?
I don't believe so. Or if I did, I kind of...
You'd know. Walking into that area for the first time was jaw-dropping. It was one of the best FromSoft experiences. It's this like massive citadel capital that you go through, and like you go down in the sewers at one point, and you're up and you're climbing on buildings, and like there's a massive dragon skeleton in there, because like,
that's cool. It's like
a place where they'd had like dragon wars in the past, and so like at one point you're climbing up the dragon skeleton to get further into the city, and it's so cool. And there's like mini bosses, and then you're eventually like climbing up to the tree at the top, and it's just like an absolute marvel of a place. Like, that to me was one of the best experiences. And Stormvale Castle at the beginning was my other favorite area. Like, it's so cool. You're going through it's the traditional sort of beginning area of like what would be at the start of a Dark Souls game. You always go through like a little city at the start.
Right.
But this time you're walking along it, then all of a sudden you realize, hang on, I have a jump button. And then you're like jumping down to other places, and like half of the area is like access through like a few smart
I noticed
jumps.
that too, yeah. You can like jump down onto the what's like the
Some
corners of like the ledges of the buildings and kind of go around the corner, and then all of a sudden you've made it somewhere else.
Yeah, that to me, that moment was like, holy fuck, like this is gonna be an insane game. So those were cool areas. The other thing is going down into the underground for the first time and realizing how big and extensive like Sophia Riverwell is, and like Nokron, and all those areas down below where they've got like this, it looks like the night sky with all the stars. That was a crazy moment of like, holy shit, this game is huge. And I feel like you keep having that where it's like, okay, I've gotten a little bit more of the map. Like, that's probably like half of it. And then you get more and you're like, oh my god, that was like 20% of the map. And you're like, okay, I gotta be getting close. And it's like, nope, the underground's twice as big now. And then, nope, there's actually another area like kind of just up into this island that you didn't realize. And it just keeps going and like one-upping itself.
I remember having that feeling when I went underground for the first time, and I think the start, like when we were all playing it, the very beginning, I think I was the first one of my friends to really find the underground, because I mean, it just happenstance where I happened to go, right? And I remember just texting a couple people. It might have even been you too.
You did,
and being like, have you found like the well yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no. I'm like, well, wait till you go down.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it is shocking when you like see the size of it and the scope and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask too, speaking of favorite areas, what were some of your favorite bosses in the game?
Oh man, okay. I wrote down a few, because they all have like the
Crazy
variations
names,
of the same 3 names. So my favorite boss, if I had to pick one, was Godric the Grafted.
Now is he
End of Stormvale Castle.
Yeah, okay.
So you fight Margaret to get there, who I also was a big fan of. But Godric is so cool.
I liked him
To
too.
me, like, he was the perfect level where I think he wasn't too outrageous with some of his movesets, but he was definitely difficult at the time. He had like a really couple cool moves where you could jump them, which was like a new thing in Elden Ring that ended up being pretty strong, where they do like a ground pound or something that like reverberates on the ground and you can actually jump over it, which feels super cool. And then he has, of course, like one of the best mid-fight cutscenes where he puts his arm in the dragon, like the dead dragon beside him, and he like pulls it out and then he starts shooting fire out of his dragon arm. And he is just so cool. So to me, that like set the tone really well. The other boss I really like is super, super late game, and it's Hoaraloo. And he's kind of got like a crazy mid-phase too. Like, he starts out just sort of like this dude. He's late game, he's kind of spoiler, but he starts out, he's this dude, and he's got this like massive lion spirit with him. And the lion spirit's there, and it's kind of like, you fight him, he's got like a big weapon, and it's sort of like it's kind of generic for the first bit. And then in phase 2, he tells the lion, he sort of absorbs it, and he goes just absolutely fucking nuts on you.
Wow.
He's like this ripped dude, he like loses his weapon, he's like takes his shirt off, and he's yelling.
Damn.
And then he just starts like, he starts like suplexing you and doing like
Holy
crazy
shit.
karate moves. And he just becomes like the Undertaker for the second half of the fight. And the lore on that is like, he doesn't absorb the lion as if like, okay, I've got like the strength of a lion now. It's actually more of like, okay, lion, stop holding me back. Like, I'm about to go Super Saiyan like God mode.
He's held back by his spirit lion.
His spirit lion. He's like, no, take the lion training wheels off, and he just like, he genuinely like suplexes you and like throws you 30 feet in the air. And the first time I did that, I was like, this is so fucking stupid, and I love it.
That's fantastic.
So I'm a big fan of bosses like that. I gotta shout out Melania, the infamous boss. I think she has some stuff that's really, really fun, but I think she's a little too hard. And I get like, you know, we're all about the challenge in Elden Ring. She's optional, whatever. She fucking hurts.
Yeah,
she
she's
hurts
a bit much.
so much. Waterfowl, I know you can dodge it, but it's intense and it feels so rough. She'll just like 30 hit combo on you and like heal to full, and you're sitting there like, well, I'm dead.
Wow. So is that the first time then with Millennia that you feel as though there's a boss in a FromSoft game that should be toned down a little bit?
I think it depends. I mean, like, I don't know what she's like. Maybe if you have a shield, it's a little bit easier, or I know there's certain like moves that people can use. Like, you get like the weapon arts on your weapon, and I know there's certain like dodging ones that help a lot. And so like there's ways to kind of mitigate and get around her. But if you just show up like as if you're ready to fight any other boss, she was pretty insane, and I could definitely see where people get frustrated on her. But it all comes down to preference. Like, I fucking ran it back with her like so many times. Probably the most times I've ever had to fight a boss.
Wow.
Was Melania in any FromSoft game. But then there's other ones like Godskin Duo was like a double boss. There's 2 ones, you kind of fight them a few times separately, and then you fight them together. And that boss is supposed to be really hard, and I beat it on my first try. So I think it really just depends like what your playstyle is and like how you approach the game. But I just think in general, Elden Ring has taken a lot from all the other games, and it's really cool to see all the inspirations. And you know, it's cool to be like, oh, that's like Dark Souls 3, and like, okay, that's Bloodborne, and okay, that's Sekiro. But I think the thing is like, it's become very fast paced, and some of the like crazy moves the bosses do, it feels like Sekiro fights. And even Melania, I think there's like the Ministry ninjas have like the same kick and ground pound that she does, and I was like, oh, she's a cool ninja from Sekiro, got it. But in Sekiro, you have a very different capability for defense with the
Mm.
parry system. And some of the Elden Ring bosses, I was like, I wish I could just fight them as Sekiro.
If
because
I was
like,
only in playing this other game with
exactly,
the same boss.
if I could waterfowl like ting 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 40 hits in a row, that's awesome. To dodge through it as just a little lowly tarnished, very difficult.
Very tough.
So I'm interested to see where it goes, because I think I personally prefer the bit of a slower pace to it, like just a little bit more grounded. And I think I've seen a lot of people online say that like the endgame bosses just get like outrageous because they're just so aggressive, and they like, you know, the second you go to heal, they throw something at you and that stops you. And so there's definitely workarounds, but it feels a little bit more like you have to outsmart or come up with a strategy, as opposed to I've really gone up against them a few times and I know which way to dodge. Like I've learned that string of moves, and of course that's definitely still like how it works, but it feels just a little bit less of like I can consistently be perfect dodging. I know it's like one fast dodge and then a slow one, and then like I take a break and then I've got a time to hit and then it's your turn. Whereas it feels like a lot of time they go nuts and it's like, okay, please calm down. I'd like a turn.
Right.
No, you're still going. Okay, I'm gonna make a cup of tea. I'll come back. You're still freaking out. Got it. But there's definitely some cool stuff in the game, and the area she's in, the Halig tree, is really cool. You're kind of like climbing along like branches, and then you fall down. There's like these like pavilions, and there's like all these rope bridges connecting these buildings. It's a really cool area, and you finally get to her, and she like scarlet rots you, and you die 60 times, but eventually you get her.
Oh, that's pretty cool. One of the last things I wanted to ask you, and you mentioned it earlier, is just the story of the game. Like how I know you're very meticulous going through, wanting to read all the item lore and all that type of stuff, and you know, really investigate different things in different environments. Like how did you come away feeling about the story in this game in comparison to the others?
So this is another thing. I think they've taken their traditional storytelling method and they've applied it to a much larger world. And so I think the story of Elden Ring is actually one of the most interesting. Like it is really cool. There's a lot going on with how the ring started and where the tree comes from. And there's a lot of like kind of like cosmic outer gods, like almost like kind of like a Bloodborne-esque kind of thing, where it's like, you know, the Elden Ring comes from almost like a different dimension, and it's sort of like their things are like envoys of a higher power come in. There's a lot of really interesting lore. My favorite little lore tidbit being that, what's his name? The guy in the Caelid boss. He starts with an R. It's not Radagon, maybe, but it's not Radagon.
Radagon isn't Radagast the Brave from like something?
Yeah, it's the Lord of the Rings thing. Oh, I'm getting his name mixed up. But
Daniel
everybody
Radcliffe.
knows him. Daniel Radcliffe. Everybody knows him. The big fucking massive guy in Caelid with the two axes that rides that tiny little horse.
Mm-hmm.
And his horse is like 10% the size of him, and he rides it. And the lore reason is that like he loves his horse, so he learned gravity magic so that he uses gravity magic so that he can ride his horse, and it's like not too much
mad
weight
respect for that guy.
And it's tiny. Like it took me like 3 times fighting him to notice he had a horse, like a teeny tiny little horse between his legs, and he wasn't just like zooming around the arena. So he's awesome. But there's a lot of really cool lore stuff, and I think it's one of the coolest games to put together, because so many of the named important characters in the lore you end up fighting or interacting with, and they're not as much in the background. But I will say is it is the hardest game to really figure out and understand as you go, because there's just so much of it to look at, and so much of it is like, okay, this item description gave me a clue, and then this item description on the complete other end of the map, like 35 hours away, gave me another clue I put together. And so it's easier to miss things, and it's also easier to go at it in maybe a less optimal order.
Right, because if you were playing like Bloodborne or any of the Dark Souls games, they would hypothetically know, like when you find this clue, it's not going to make any sense, but we know like an hour into the future, you're going to make it to this next room and you're going to find this and it's going to piece itself together.
Yes.
But then in Elden Ring, you might go completely the wrong way, not wrong way, but like a different way for multiple hours and just completely forget how it relates. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they can't be as intentional about how you're going to engage with all of the information. And the other thing I found that was unfortunate to me, and I'm still in the process of like, you know, YouTubing all of the like stuff I missed.
My favorite way to consume the story of the game is on YouTube after the fact.
Yes, I'm doing a lot of that right now. I'm in the process, but a lot of the NPC quests, and everybody says like they're always cryptic, they're easy to miss. Like I get that that's just a FromSoft thing, but I found in the other games, I think I managed to get a lot more of them completed in my first playthrough because it's just you can't miss them as easily. Like in Elden Ring, there's so many NPCs where like, okay, you run into them in the first area, they're out in the overworld, and then they're like, all right, bye-bye, like I've moved, see you later. And like, you know, you have no idea where they've gone, and like I looked up guides. This is the first FromSoft game where like I kind of want to know what this character's doing. I'm just looking at where the fuck they've gone. And it's like they'll teleport around the map without tons of indication where they're going. And so if you run into them again, it feels amazing. And it's like it's the trade-off, right? Like it feels so good when you naturally do run into them again.
Right, but your chances are just so low.
But yeah, there's definitely times where it's like, well, and I just never saw that NPC again. Like I wonder what he's up to. And you look it up and it's like, oh, he's in this area, but I'd already gone there, and so like I didn't go back.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do? Backtrack to every location?
So I wouldn't go back. So like, I don't know, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Like, I totally get the idea of, like, you're not supposed to find everything, and, like, you know, maybe it's a community effort to kind of, like, figure it out and, like, learn, like, once you do this, you know, Roger moves over here, and so that's cool. But at the same time, it's like, I kind of just would have liked to have seen more of it, and then I feel like I missed out on a bit of, like, the context of some of the stories and just, like, the whole world because, you know, I missed the, like, you know, I missed one of the early magic guys, so I didn't learn about the certain type of magic. And I just kind of wish there'd been, I don't want a quest log, like, you know, people are like, that's not an Elden Ring thing. You can have a quest log in a FromSoft game, fine. I don't think I necessarily need that. I just think maybe a little bit more direction on some of the quests, or a little bit more, like, flexibility of, like, you can't lock yourself out of it. Like, I had a character that I just didn't do something quickly enough who just straight up died, and I was talking to a friend and he's like, oh, I'm really enjoying, like, it was Roger, he's like this cool mage, he wears like funny pants.
Oh, I know him. Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys to summon, actually.
He comes to the circle, the round table, and I guess I didn't do his quest line quickly enough, and I progressed too far, and so he just straight up died. Like, I just found him dead one day, and I was like, oh no.
Oh, Roger.
I'm like, oh dear.
What have they done to you, Roger?
So that kind of was a bit disappointing, and that happens with every game like that. Will happen if you don't do stuff quickly enough, but it's just there's so much to do, and it's so...
It seems to me like they could have solved this pretty easily with just putting icons on the map of like where the NPCs are located.
They have eventually. They did actually patch that in now, where you look at your map and it shows you where an NPC is. The problem is that it only shows you known locations. So if somebody, like, there's one girl who I looked up a guide for this, and you have to keep giving her grapes is what she asked for. Now, grapes are secretly eyeballs, obviously.
Oh, good, great.
Because nothing can be nice in a FromSoft game. So you keep giving her eyeballs, and she'll eat an eyeball, and she'll go to like a new church, and you're like, oh, eyeball delivery.
As you do.
She skip the dish as another like grape. So you show another eyeball. She's like, oh, delicious, thank you, and then she like fucks off somewhere else. And so I looked up a guide, and it's like kind of in a similar area, and so I guess like you could just go around and look and check each one, but I was like, fuck that, like I've been to this area, I've explored everything, I'm just gonna keep teleporting to them in like in the right order. And so like I finished her quest, and it ended up being good for the frenzied flame thing that I did. But like, you'd never know otherwise. Like, you feed her a grape, and then you're like, she's like fucks off, and like when she goes to a new area, it's no longer on your map where she is, because you have to find her again before the map then denotes that she's there. So like I don't know how you necessarily like figure that out without a guide, or I spent 150 goddamn hours.
Yeah, you would
in this
find
game.
her. You would have found
like,
her.
I gotta spend like $600 if I'm gonna find her, and like the delivery fee on these grapes is gonna be outrageous if I've got to go around the whole of Leonia Lakes to look for her.
Oh my god.
So I think it's an interesting thing if I really liked that style, but more in a contained game. Whereas when you stretch it out over this massive open world, I don't think it works as well. Though that being said, the moments where you do just happen to stumble on things in the right order and you hit the right person at the right time where it's pretty relevant, it does feel amazing. I just don't know if the trade-off is
if it's worth it, right?
But yeah, the lore is fucking cool. There's some cool as fuck characters. There's some really, really horrible family dynamics going on. It's the most dysfunctional family I've ever seen. Like, George R. R. Martin had a hand in it, so you know how you know what he's like.
Wow. Okay, so any last things you wanted to mention about this game before we finish up? And I've got one last question at the very end for you.
Man, okay. I had a few small little details. I just think that I wish the game was a little bit shorter so that you hit the high moments more and you have less time where you're spending exploring in mines. And I think there's a few bosses that are incredible, but I would have liked to have fought them once, maybe twice.
Right.
I don't need to fight 27 of the same dragon. It's just kind of a lot. But Stormvale and Lindale were some of the best FromSoft experiences and like worth playing the game for. And the few moments, like the first time you see a dragon fly down at you in the overworld.
It's amazing.
The first time you go to Caelid and you get teleported and you're in that shack and you have to escape.
I fucking hated that.
And then you finally escape the shack and you've like shown up in like red Bloodborne and you're like, oh,
hated
fuck.
that place, man.
You know, like running around and you hear Alexander call it to you the first time and he's stuck and you gotta get him out, and then you join his fight club later. Like, there's so many moments, like, going down in the well. The first time you get up to Altus Plateau, where you, like, go up this elevator, or you take, like, a kind of, like, a stair route through these mines, and you get up on top, like, so high up, and it's, like, this amazing vista and view, and it's, like, you've stepped into a whole different game. Like, the Elden Ring does such high highs. It's just sometimes they're 60 hours apart. Right.
And between those 60 hours, you fought the same Mariner 4 times.
The Mariner, yeah. That's right. You Mariner a little bit. You've marinated in him quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so my final question for you then, before we close the door on Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this game rank among the FromSoft pantheon of games for you?
You know, I feel bad ragging on Elden Ring because I want to remind everyone that this is an S+ tier game for me. Like, FromSoft cannot fail. I fucking love FromSoft. Like, sure, there's things that were annoying. Like, there was things that I wasn't as big of a fan of. But I think that is to be, like, kept in perspective. When you make a game as ambitious as Elden Ring, it's not going to be perfect. There's gonna be some balance issues. You're gonna run into a boss sometimes that you're way over leveled for and you just smoke them. And then you're gonna run into another boss where you're like, he one-shot me and that sucks.
Right,
like,
I'm dead now.
It's gonna happen. Like, it's impossible to be as consistent as to be as perfect. So Elden Ring is still an S tier game. I think it's actually at the bottom of my list, though. I think if I were to make a list, Sekiro and Bloodborne are like just kissing at the top.
Just kissing at the top.
Kissing at the top. Then it's Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, Demon Souls, and then I think it's Elden Ring.
What about Dark Souls 2?
I have not finished Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 is under Elden Ring for what I've played.
Gotcha. Okay.
Haven't finished it, which I really should go and do that.
I think you owe it to yourself at this point to finish it. I mean, come on.
I do. But yeah, so I think it's near the bottom, but I also think that I have a bias coming in where I would not pick an open world game to begin with. So it kind of had
but
that.
But still, that factors in, though. That matters.
Factors in, and so...
Interesting. Well, there you have it, folks. The second worst FromSoft game.
Second worst FromSoft. That's like saying, like, I didn't get $1 million, but I got $100,000.
This is why reading the headlines only and not reading the article is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, it's still amazing. I still highly, highly recommend it. But I would say maybe play Bloodborne if you could only play one. Or Sekiro. I don't know. They're making out of the top still.
Play Bloodborne, everybody.
Play Bloodborne.
You don't need to go fight Lady Butterfly. You can take my word for that. All right, well, let's move to the second part of the show, which is, of course, our fun game show, Good Listening, where today I will be teaching or seeing if Kate has good listening skills or not.
Sorry, what was that?
Okay, so this is how it works for those of you joining us for the first time on for this game. So basically, we take turns selecting 5 songs from each other's games played list. So these are songs from games that Kate has for sure played before, so it's not cheating or anything like that. You've played these games before. I'm gonna play you about 30 seconds from each song, and we're gonna see if you can guess which game this is from, or you can also, I guess, tell me like what level it's from or the name of the song
for a
bonus point. I think we said guessing the song is a point, and then it's a half point for if you can tell me the name of the song or where it's played. So you can get actually 2 points per song.
Right.
But it's only out of 5 because it's so hard. So we can actually score above 100%. And definitely play along at home, everybody. Let us know how you do. You can send your results into our email address, which is circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Let us know if you can beat Kate's score on good listening today. So without any further ado, we're going to get into the songs here with song number 1. It's just going to be a little bit of clicking here to mute ourselves while we listen. But everyone, this is song number 1. All right, song number 1. What do you think? What do we think?
So I've got this one for sure. I know exactly what game this is. I went through the first time I hear like the chiptune music. I always think, I don't know if it's because you're here, but I always think Mega Man Battle Network is like the first place my mind goes. And then like the doo-doo-doos kind of kicked in. I was like, oh, Undertale.
The doo-doo-doos come in, yeah.
But then it got a little bit further. It's Contra. That is 100% Contra.
Okay.
I know that is the original, like the NES Contra. Especially the end with that like finishing, that solidified it. Where in Contra though, this is like the doo-doo is the end of the level for sure. I want to say it's it's either the first level where you're in like the green grass, or it's the snow level. Which is kind of the same level, but just snowy.
Yeah. You might say all the levels are kind of the same level.
Some of them are different. You look at that like
except
factory.
For the base, except for the base.
Yeah. And there's that factory where you're like dodging lasers and stuff. That's true. I'm gonna go with it's just the first. It's Contra for sure. I'll go with it's the first original level.
All right. Well, you've scored yourself 1 point.
Yes.
Although you were wrong about the level. It's not the first level. It's actually the waterfall level where you're jumping up. It's like more vertical than the other levels.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's that one. But good guess. That was good.
Okay. I'm on the board. That's all that matters. I didn't get shut out.
All right. Remember your score because I'm probably going to forget.
Okay.
And let's move along to the second song in today's quiz. Okay, song number 2.
I got lost. This is the opposite for me, where I got less confident as it went on.
Okay.
My first thought was it was WarioWare.
Okay.
And it was like the Ashley level because she's kind of spooky, but like without the lyrics. And then
that's a really deep cut to think about.
It's kind of weird, right? And then I was like, okay, no, but it's like a Nintendo-y game it's like the spooky level of a Nintendo game. So then I thought maybe it could be Paper Mario, and like the creepy. It's not the creepy forest.
The Forever Forest.
Forever Forest, but I don't think it's that. I feel like I would remember that more distinctly. But like, would you pick Mario?
I don't know.
I don't know. And then I was thinking, like, maybe it's like a haunted map of like a Mario Party. It kind of has that like Nintendo.
You're all over the map here. You're all over the place.
It has a creepy Nintendo feel to it, where it's like the creepy level, but it's not actually that scary because it's got to be like a Nintendo friendly game.
Yeah. It's like Shy Guys carrying pumpkins around or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go with WarioWare. I don't know. This one's stumping me. WarioWare.
All right. Well, this song here, everybody, is the proof that this game is not as easy as it sounds. Because I thought for sure this was going to be a slam dunk for you. This is Polar Push from Crash Bash.
Oh my god, it's Polar.
We just played Crash Bash.
We did, and it's not even a horror level at all.
No, it's not. But you can see it now that you've.
Now that you mention it, Jesus Christ, this game is hard.
It's very tough.
It's hard without any context.
Mm-hmm. Well, this one I'm for sure gonna think you're gonna know what type of game it is for song number 3, but this is the one where I'm very confident that this is the hardest one.
Okay.
Probably that's ever been on this game.
Oh my god.
So good luck, but knowing how this goes, you'll probably get it right. So let's see. All right.
Oh my god. I don't have the faintest idea. Can you play it again?
Sure. We'll listen to this one a second time. Yeah. Okay, everybody?
I won't do that with the other
one. One more time. Okay, we'll pause it there. What is this from, Kate?
So I'm probably totally wrong, but I think this is very, very specific. But I think this is in Sekiro, where you get jumped by the snake. and that, like, the snake surprises you. And it's like, holy shit. And then it quiets down and just kind of like tense and you're like running and hiding. Because I don't know what the fuck else it would be.
Yeah. So this is my thought process on this one. Okay. First of all, that's my favorite part of Sekiro from what I've played.
It is
I love really that part of the game. So this was a song I put in honestly because I was like, the other 4 of these are so easy that you're gonna get them no problem. So I put this one in. This is from Outlast when the soldier attacks you. I thought.
Oh my god.
Because you played Outlast.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we never put horror games on here. And because it was like so obviously scary, I thought that you would probably pick a horror game.
Right.
And then I just picked a song from early in the playlist of the OST.
I see what you mean.
You know? Yeah.
The downside to horror games is that you're so scared. I couldn't even begin to recollect what else was going on at the time.
This is probably
it was
unfair.
Close. I picked the,
Yeah.
It's kind of the same idea. You get ambushed by something surprising and you gotta run away.
Yeah. I think that was a little unfair, but
No, I love it. That's so specific. I never in a million years would have guessed that.
All right. Well, let's see how you do for the last 2 songs. This is song number 4. Okay.
That one was a banger. That was really good.
And I'm sure it's familiar to you,
It is so fun. That's the problem with playing this game is it's like, I recognize that, like, I immediately get a sense of, like, I like this. It has a positive feeling in my heart. But, like,
my heart.
sometimes it's been so long since you played a game, and, like, I think this is F-Zero.
Okay.
This is the like, kind of, like, twangy, like, synthy kind of guitar. I think that's F-Zero.
Which F-Zero? Which F-Zero?
I'm gonna go with the game, whatever one we had on Game Boy, because that was maybe the only one that we owned.
Yeah, okay.
And I will hazard a guess that it is Big. I don't think it's Big Blue. I don't think it's
not
Big Blue,
Big Blue. But
I can't think of another F-Zero level.
Okay. Right.
So
Mute City, perhaps.
Okay,
Mute City?
That is the other one.
Yeah.
It's F-Zero for sure, though.
Okay, well, the reason I was suggesting levels is because it's not F-Zero.
It's not F-Zero. No.
You're wrong. You were right on like the vibe of it, though. Mm-hmm. This is actually the multi-man melee song from Super Smash Bros. Melee, when you do like the 100-man melees and all that stuff.
Shit. You know what else? You know what else crossed my mind? I was like, I'm pretty sure I've heard this in Smash, which is why F-Zero is like, there's F-Zero songs because of Captain Falcon.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to do. I was like going through I was like, oh, Smash Bros. We haven't done Smash on here. But then as I was going through the playlist, I was like, well, I'm actually kind of limited to what I can pick because so much music from that game is actually from other stuff. And so I wanted like a Smash Bros. Specific song. Oh, no. But then it gets into like, am I going to pick the main menu? Like you're going to get that 100%. So.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. You seem pretty confident.
Damn. Okay.
Damn,
well,
all right.
Let's see how you do with our last song. I hope you can get it because right now you're sitting at 1
Yeah, that's
point.
Not amazing.
So good luck. Here's the last song. All right.
This is the most familiar one.
Yeah.
But fuck, what is it from? I want to say Death's Door. I think it might be like the forest level from Death's Door. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It could be a lot of things though. It's got the flute. It's got that. It's not a Zelda thing. It could be a little Zelda, but it's not. I think Death's Door is my gut feeling on this, but this is the one where it's like I've heard this a million times.
Right. Now, just to say, hold on, before you get too far down your rabbit hole, Death's Door here. I don't know if we ever put it as a rule, but I was trying not to repeat games, and I did use Death's Door another time. So I'm going to tell you right now, it's not Death's Door.
I put Death's Door on for you.
Oh, right. Maybe that's what I want.
I feel like it's something I played somewhat recently.
Oh, she's really trying here, everybody. She's really trying.
It hurts because I am so familiar. Like I would recognize this anywhere, but I can't tell you what it is. Like it's not. I played it recently. I think it's fuck.
Can I give you a hint?
Yes.
Okay, your hint is this game. The game that this is, or the character in this game is in Smash Bros.
In Smash Bros. Is it a Zelda thing? It could.
That's a good hint. That's a really generous hint, everybody.
Be a Zelda thing. I thought, like it's very like Wind Waker-y for sure. Like I can almost like keep the song going. Like I can do like the next few bits in my mind.
Yeah.
But what is it? There's so many characters in Smash Bros. It's obviously not a Persona thing. Are they in as like an actual playable character?
Yeah, no, they're playable. Skin? They're a playable character. Yeah. And as the host of Good Listening today, I'm going to impose a 30-second timer for this answer here.
Okay, maybe I will go with my other gut feeling then. It's a Wind Waker thing because Tune link.
Okay.
They do have that link is in there.
Gotcha.
I don't think it's Breath of the Wild. Maybe it's Wind Waker.
Wind Waker. And what would the song be? Where would you listen to it?
Is it just Outset Island? It's just like the cute little hub island?
It is, in fact, Dragon Roost Island from Wind Waker.
Dragon Roost Island? Okay. All right.
So there you go. I think that's 2 points.
That's two generous points.
2 great points.
The Contra one I fucking had
the Contra one you knew.
Everything else, like, man.
That was good.
This game is
all right. Was that harder or easier than the first time? Do you remember?
I don't even know if I got a point the first time we played. So probably easier.
I'm not sure that
Your Outlast question was cruel.
Yeah, that was cruel.
But other than that, probably easier.
Wow.
I love it though. It's so fun. Just even to hear some of the tracks, right? Like it's a good time.
As much as I love putting the quiz together, on good listening, I prefer to be the guesser.
Okay.
I think. Usually I prefer to ask the questions, but good listening is just so fun to rack your brain.
It is fun. I will make one for you soon. You are better. You're a better guesser, I think.
I'm excited for this. And so let us know if you played along, what your score was. Did you beat Kate's 2 points? Which may have been harder than I thought. So and next time I look forward to me guessing when we play the game again. But for now, let's move along to our listener mail question of the day, which is very much related to good listening. So we had a question from the guys for this week.
Yeah, it's a group effort today, but it's a great question. I think it works well with our music quiz, and it's kind of funny little detail. So they want to know, what video game music do you listen to? Like, not just what's a good soundtrack, but what do you like actively listen to as part of like your just regular music rotation, but with the caveat that it can't be Persona 5 because that's the obvious answer.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was thinking about this one, and first of all, good question. Thank you, the guys, for asking. So I don't listen to like a ton of game music all the time. I kind of just have like certain songs saved onto my liked playlist and like they just sort of pop up. But it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I have a lot of music from like the mid-2000s NHL games, like actually on my playlist. Like,
right, because those are just actual songs.
Queens of the Stone Age is on there, and like Lay Down by Priestess. And
there was a Billy Talent song.
Billy Talent and Yellow Card and all this. So I have a lot of that music just, in my playlist anyways. And I found a lot of it through those games in those years. So it's kind of like, it's kind of cheating. But in terms of actual game music, I find myself sort of when I'm working, I like listening to lo-fi because it's, it's relaxing. It doesn't have lyrics, so I don't find it distracting. And a lot of the time I put on like game related lo-fi playlists. So a lot of times it's either Final Fantasy or Pokemon that I kind of put on because they're familiar and they're sort of like that whimsical RPG type of feel. So I feel like those are probably my answers for this, or either that, or when I'm working out, sometimes I put on the Streets of Rage 4
That's awesome.
because those songs are awesome.
Those
too.
are nice hype ups.
Yeah.
I do the exact same thing where I'll put on like a soundtrack or like a playlist like that stuff. Like like lo-fi, like JRPG music tends to be really good for that kind of stuff. So I definitely put those on from time to time, but intentional. But I kind of took this as in like I have like a huge Spotify library and I have everything on shuffle all the time, and so there are staple songs. Like I wouldn't necessarily put like a Final Fantasy soundtrack in there to just pop up on shuffle, but I do have some game songs that are just 100% in my regular music library. And so I got a shout out to from Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, like
Pumpkin Hill,
Aquatic Mind, Pumpkin Hill, Live and Learn, like those songs. Yeah. Those songs just genuinely in my music.
They're
like
great.
They're awesome.
City Escape, or whatever,
City Escape, like the Crush 40's in there. There's a couple Undertale songs. You never skip Megalovania. Partially it's a meme, but it's also just fun.
It's good.
I got some Guilty Gear stuff. Like Smell the Game is a good one. But the main one I think I listen to probably the most, or have the most of, anything Darren Korb.
Yeah, right.
So that's all of like Transistor, Hades, what's the first one? Bastion. That kind of stuff. Like he's just such a good artist, and especially the Transistor stuff, like when they get those vocals in there, they are incredible. So I would just genuinely, like, if there was a concert, I'd go. Like,
that's a good 100%. Shout out. Another one too, if you'd asked this question in a month or so, Metal Hellsinger's coming out.
Oh,
and
fuck,
that will definitely be like, I'll download that whole playlist.
To be fair, I think I have the playlist on my Spotify anyway.
True, yeah.
Because again, it's just great metal stuff. But yeah. Fuck, that game's gonna be good.
Man, I'm excited. That was a good question. Thank you, the guys. And if you would like to write in a future episode and have your question answered, you can, of course, do that, like I said before, circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com.
And suggest us some more good game music.
Yeah. Give us some playlists. Or maybe, games with good soundtracks so we can play those and then use them in future episodes of Good Listening. That'd be cool, too. But yeah, I think that's going to close out this special show where we recorded in the same place. Doesn't happen too often, but... thank you for joining us, everybody. Send in those emails, as we said, at the top of the show. One last thing to remind everybody as well, which we haven't said in a couple episodes now, is that you can support us on, I think it's through Anchor. That's right, through Anchor. And if you want to subscribe, it's only $1 a month. And for the rest of the year, all the money we raise is going to be donated to prochoice.org, which is a great cause in the U.S. So definitely look into supporting us if you can. And with that, we'll be back in a couple weeks, or I guess next week, to discuss the news and all that good stuff. So we'll see you then. Take care of yourself, and have a good rest of your day, whatever you're doing. Okay, this is it. That's how you close the podcast.
Bye.
This is the conclusion, everybody.
Goodbye.
It's over now. Okay, all right. Goodbye.